What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the College Sports Show here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. Abby Schnabel, a little under the weather, so I'm joined by Andrew Destin, a former college sports reporter. The real ones remember our content from just a couple months ago when he was covering Penn State. I'm Noah Hiles. Andrew, it's March. I know you're covering the Penguins and the Pirates, but I know you too well to understand that you've been definitely dabbling in some college hoops coverage as well, or not coverage, but just dabbling in the action.
Yeah, I'd be lying to say if I wasn't utilizing the double laptop format there for some of these Penguins games. Got to keep tabs on all things sports related, but yeah, especially with these local schools, talking Penn State and Pitt, two runs that followed as closely as I could. Obviously, not as close as you and Chris with Pitt, but two really impressive seasons by these guys, and it's been a heck of a March Madness so far. So it's hard not to keep your eyes glued on all that.
Yeah, it's been a fun tournament, and it's especially for, like you said, the schools that are around the area. West Virginia, Pitt, and Penn State all make it in after having, and I always contest that the best seasons to cover or be a part of in any way, shape, or form are either when you're a one seed and you're a tournament championship favorite, or you're on the bubble. And all three of those teams, they were on the bubble pretty much all year long, and they
Yep.
all found their way in. And two of the three won a tournament game, Penn State and Pitt. We had a chance at one point in time for a potential Sweet 16 matchup between the two teams. Neither got the job done, lost to quality opponents in Texas and Xavier. Andrew, just all things considered, who had the better season, Penn State or Pitt?
Yeah, for me, I got to go Pitt, and it's a really close one, but I think you have to kind of put it all in perspective, right? And you know this all too well, Noah, talking about, the drought between the last NCAA tournament appearance, where Pitt was picked to finish in the ACC before the season by coaches and media and all that stuff. What Jeff Cable did with the transfer portal and really maximizing this team, I think that surprised a lot of people. The reason I say that's a better season is because with Penn State, this was kind of an expectation that eventually they would break out, and entering the year, there was kind of this consensus that this is a bubble team. It's going to be, can they win 17 games, or are they winning 20 games? Are they winning 21 games? And that's the difference between NIT or NCAA tournament. And also the perspective of, if you go back to right before the COVID pandemic, Penn State had a very, very good basketball team that at one point in time was ranked number 9 in the country before losing to Illinois at home. Lamar Stevens, all those guys. That was a really good basketball team, too. So we're not too far removed from that. So I think we can put it all in perspective. It really, the last 6-7 years, was, I think, struggled a little bit more as a program in my opinion, tougher conference. I know Ken Palm and Net and all those things will say that the Big Ten was better than the ACC this year. I don't care. It's still Duke. It's still the UNCs, the true blue buds that are in that conference year in and year out. So for what Pitt did this season by truly competing for an ACC regular season title, getting into the tournament, winning, the play-in game, and then getting the upset against Iowa State, which from the eye test didn't look like an upset, the same way that Penn State, Texas A&M didn't look like an upset. But I think for me, Penn State had a great season, but Pitt's exceeded expectations in a way that slots them ahead, at least in my perspective.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think to build further upon it, I think Penn State's body of work is probably more impressive. But
Yeah.
like you said, I think their expectations were higher. I mean, they competed well in a tougher conference. They went to a conference tournament championship. They beat a really good team in the first round. They didn't have to play in Dayton, and they had an All American. I mean, and their coach is like Capel. Both coaches got a lot of love this year, and deservedly so. But I think the reason you got to go with Pitt having the more impressive year is because basketball means more to the University of Pittsburgh than it does to Penn State
Oh,
University.
yeah.
It just does. And this, I mean, I don't know if Pitt's a football school or a basketball school, but I would think when both are humming at the right time, I still think basketball just gets the edge because it just has more of a recent history, and it just was a part of when Pitt basketball hit its stride. Uh, it was a part of the arguably greatest basketball conference ever in the Big East, and fans have been just hungry for that type of atmosphere and feel that they would get from the Panthers when they were one of the top dogs in that conference for a 10-15 year stretch in the 2000s. And there were some people who felt that never would return. And this year shows that it's capable of returning. It shows that Capel is the right guy. And it's hard not to be optimistic about Pitt basketball moving forward. Where for Penn State, and we're going to talk about it, this could have just been a one-time thing based on the group that they had, and it could have been a one-time thing based upon the coach who might not be around much longer. Where Pitt, you feel pretty comfortable with Jeff Capel and where he's at. I don't think he's leaving anytime soon. They have a great recruiting class coming in. They have their leading scorer and 3 very talented young bigs with a ton of upside returning as well. And with the landscape of the ACC right now, it's just it's a league more conducive to a new team really establishing itself as a top dog. So I think this season, while Penn State's was a bit more impressive, Pitt's is more meaningful and a bigger year altogether, because I think it marks the start of a return for a really meaningful basketball program to everyone in Western Pennsylvania, or a lot of people in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah. No, completely agreed there. I mean, this is, for me, from the outside looking in, you just go back to the teams that at one point that were ranked number 1 in the country. Ben Howland had a heck of a run coaching here. You go DeJuan Blair in the middle. There's history there, which you can't really say the same with Penn State. And to your point, with both programs when they're humming, people are talking about the Oakland Zoo a heck of a lot more than they're talking about the Legion of Blue or whatever they call themselves.
Right, and that's the thing. Like the building was sold out again, and there were rivalries reignited, and people. Penn State, I'm sure the atmosphere on their game days were big in some sorts, but it's just not football there. And the scale of football and basketball caring, I think, is kind of even at Pitt, where there's nothing that can rival Penn State football on that campus. Nothing. And there's been plenty of other programs that have won national championships or competed at an incredibly high level for decades. You look at the volleyball program, you look at the wrestling program, and while those are Olympic sports, nothing, is going to really be able to touch college basketball when your college basketball team's doing well. It's just, that's not going to generate the same amount of interest and support that football does, where for Pitt basketball, there's been a lot of success on that campus this year, but Pitt basketball seemed to have, the biggest following or interest as far as someone who's covered it all. So we'll move forward now. We'll talk a little bit more about Penn State, and I alluded to it just a couple minutes ago. The big question this offseason is, the guy who's got more plays than Broadway, as John Rothstein would say, Micah Shrewsbury. He's probably the top head coaching candidate in the country right now. Now that Ed Cooley has a new job and Rick Pitino has a new job, and you can point to a couple other spots, and I don't know if he's in the mix for Texas, which would probably be like the number 1 job in the country. But after Texas, I think any opening is in play for Micah Shrewsbury. Penn State has said they want to make a big financial commitment to keep him around. Andrew, do you anticipate that he stays with the Nittany Lions, or do you think Micah Shrewsbury will go elsewhere this offseason?
To me, I think that if he wants to leave Penn State, this is the year to do it for a multitude of reasons. Yeah. One being that this was such a transfer-laden team that next year it's going to see a dip. So that's not to say that teams wouldn't still want him next year, but there's an opportunity sitting there right in front of him to go back to his home state, to go to Indiana and coach for Notre Dame. And he's been linked to it, and I just think it makes too much sense for him. If the money is equal, to go back to his home state. I mean, let's look at his resume, right? He played high school basketball in Indiana. He got his first head coaching gig at a smaller school in Indiana, was an assistant at Purdue, assistant at Butler. These are all Indiana guy. He had the stint helping out in Boston with the Celtics for a little bit, but to me, this is an opportunity to go back home for Micah Shrewsbury. And I think, the way that he stays at Penn State is they have to make such a financial commitment to him that not only guarantees him a higher number per year. I believe right now it's been reported it's somewhere in the 1.5 to 2 million per year range. Probably got to up that, which I'm not sure that Penn State, the Board of Trustees, is truly committed to doing. And it's also got to be for a long term. He's going to need some long-term stability that guarantees that I'm sticking around there. Because if you look at the previous 2 decades of Penn State basketball coaches, Patrick Chambers had a good run there, but you go back to the names before then, it was a revolving door of guys who either had a glimpse of success and then it stumbled quickly after, and then they were out of there, or as guys who just didn't do well altogether. Now, point being, I think Mike Shrewsbury is a better coach than either of the previous names. But if he's going to stick around Penn State, they got to make a commitment to him And there's just so many roadblocks that exist there. The Bryce Jordan Center, where they play basketball, the university doesn't even own. So that's a practice facility that isn't quite up to standard for what Big Ten basketball programs across the country have. I mean, if you were compare the Bryce Jordan Center to Assembly Hall in Indiana, it's night and day. I'm not one to speak for Notre Dame and the facilities they have, but this is a guy who's from Indiana. It seems like an opportunity to go back home, compete in a school that, in a lot of ways, you and I talked about this, some similarities, football first schools, but Notre Dame maybe has a little bit more of a basketball tradition. And there's something to be said about coaching in the ACC, at least for however much longer Notre Dame exists in this partnership with being in the ACC the way it is. But I just think this makes too much sense for him to move on. As much as it's going to hurt Penn State fans, the way he stays is they make him an outrageous financial commitment that I don't know that the school is willing to make.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. And I think when you look at it, Notre Dame has a better chance of competing now in the ACC than Penn State does now in the Big Ten.
Absolutely.
It just does. And that's crazy to say considering that he just led them to a game where they were 2 points away from sending the Big Ten championship into overtime. But I just think that the ACC it's a league in transition right now where you don't know how Duke's going to be moving forward, and North Carolina for that matter, with their head coaching legends both gone recently, and how are recruits in the future going to stick around there? Are those two schools going to be able to still pull in 5 stars? I don't know. Without those two legends there, it might be harder. I think it's a league in flux right now, which is welcoming to a program like Notre Dame, where it's like, hey, one good transfer portal class, we're back in this thing. And then you could also make the argument if Notre Dame, not if, but when Notre Dame moves to the Big Ten, whenever that eventually does happen, I would still take Notre Dame as a program having a better chance to compete in the Big Ten than Penn State basketball. Like you said, the resources and everything, don't get me wrong, Notre Dame football is going to take up a lot of resources and stuff as well. But the allocation at Penn State, that's the focus. It's football. Notre Dame wants to have a good basketball. I mean, they've been to multiple Elite Eights in the last 20 years, and they were a part of the Big East. That was like the big basketball league, and they have a bigger following. They just do. Where I mean, I'm not going to say either one of them are to the level of a Syracuse or whatever other kind of opening might have existed interest wise, but they're still I just think it's a better opportunity, like you said, and the Indiana thing makes a big difference as well. So we'll move forward now. Bracket, mine's busted. You said you've got 3 of your Final Four alive. My Final Four was Arizona, Duke, Kansas, and Houston. So, and my national champion was Kansas beating Duke. So I've pretty much, as always, just been a fool when it comes to filling out these things. It is what it is. Congrats on your success, Andrew. I'm really rooting for you to, get your Crimson Tide, just that morally great program, national title. I'd love to see the good guys win one every now and then. But just looking at the field here, I want to ask 2 questions. One, does Alabama have the easiest road to the Final Four ever? It certainly feels like it. And 2, who are your Final Four based on the 16 teams that are left standing?
Yeah, I can't think of an easier path, honestly, in the last decade or so than the one that we've got sitting in front of us for Alabama. I mean, we were talking about before this. I like San Diego State a lot. I think they've done a phenomenal job as a program there. But if we're comparing Alabama to San Diego State, right, that's 2 different stratospheres. And then after that, you play the winner of Creighton and Princeton. So to me, that's about as easy as it gets to get to the Final Four. So it's no brainer to me to keep Alabama in the thing. But my remaining 3, I got Tennessee, Texas, and UCLA. UCLA, I know, dealing with the injury, don't have Clark there, locking it down on defense, but the emergence of Amari Bailey really stands out to me. That was a statement win by Tennessee over a really good Duke team that I thought was coming into its own. The way that they looked against Pitt and kind of finished out the regular season, I really liked how Duke was playing. Tennessee kind of took it to them. That really, that was a statement win. Yeah. So
I agree. So I think, Alabama, if they don't make the Final Four, I don't know. It's going to be like one of the biggest shocks to me this whole tournament, which is saying something because a 1, 2, and 3 seed have all lost in the first round. But I just look at this team, and I mean, it's been one of the best teams in the country all year, and they have a Mountain West team in the Sweet 16, and they're playing either the fourth best Big East team or Princeton after that. It's just I don't know how they don't make it to the Final Four. But my other regional winners, I have Kansas State. I just really liked what I saw from them against Kentucky. Got to watch them play in person this past weekend, and I've been impressed with them all year. I've watched them play a lot of games. Just they're a really tough team out of a really tough conference, and I think that the Big 12 always has one of those teams that sneaks its way into the Final Four and wins the national championship the last 2 years, and I think that might be Kansas State this year. Going to continue the Greensboro bias here and take Xavier to the Final Four. Guards matter in March, and this whole region, as John Rothstein said, it's the region of guard play, and I think that's the region, that top right portion of the bracket, where you haven't seen a lot of upsets. It's a 1, a 5, a 2, and a 3 in that Sweet 16 portion there. And it's because the guard play on all 4 of those teams is outstanding. I think the winner of the tournament probably could come from here if it's not Alabama. And I'm just going to go with Xavier, though, just because the way they share the basketball, when they shoot, the way they can defend. And I even like their size down low. And Sean Miller, great coach. Just seems like they're rolling at the right time right now. And then my fourth Final Four pick will be UCLA. The Bruins have just been that quiet team that's just taking care of business. There hasn't been any flash or stress or anything about them. They cover, they get the job done, and they get ready for the next opponent. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to switch. I think it'll be an Alabama-UCLA final, and it's probably going to be the Tide coming out on top. That would be my pick. Andrew, any final thoughts on March Madness? Any games that you're particularly excited to watch this weekend?
Oh, I'm always rolling with the Bruins. I'm excited to see them up against Gonzaga. I think that's going to be a special one. I mean, any UCLA game I'm tuned into, and that's as good of a one as we're going to see in terms of power against power, just based on all the upsets we've seen. So locked in on that one.
And the last time those two teams faced in this tournament, I mean, it was one of the best games of all time. So yeah, that'll be a fun one.
Depending on how you look at it, of course.
Yeah, fair. I think Miami-Houston has potential to be a really fun one as well. But it's all going to be fun. That's all we got for you guys. I really appreciate everyone tuning in as always, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We'll have more college sports talk here on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. Take care.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.